Hello, and welcome back to the Tuesday Map. This is fusion writing, where building character meets creating structure. And this week we are talking about two very interestingly interlinked topics. One is the types of antagonists that Victoria is going to take us through in just a moment. And the other topic on character development has to do with attention, where our characters get and give attention. So before I say any more, let's turn it over to Victoria for more information about types of antagonists.
Hello, friends and Lilligans. Here we are back on Tuesday, ready to tackle another topic. So, as you're starting to think about the components of your story, you have one side, which is your protagonist. That's your hero, who we all are secretly in love with our heroes. And then you have the other side, which is your bad guys. And the two together build conflict and tension and ultimately drive towards the outcome of your story. What many people don't spend a lot of time thinking or working on is what kinds of characters can you throw at your hero in order to challenge him or her to move forward along through the narrative? Well, we're talking about antagonists. So let's break that down. So, specifically, what is an antagonist? Well, an antagonist simply represents reconsidering something, okay, a point of action or a point of view, and avoiding or preventing something. So an antagonist is something standing in the way of your character. And that can be because of their attitude, like they're saying, don't go any further. You shouldn't do this. Don't consider this, right? They're arguing against your main character's action. Or they want your main character to reconsider what they're doing. Maybe you should think about that plan before you do it. Okay, so they're hindering that main character somehow. Well, there's a second thing, which is called a contagonist. So your contagonist represents a different element of conflict. Think of your contagonist as someone who presents things like temptation or a misdirection or a redirection in what that main character is doing. They might lead that person astray. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because what if that minor character, that contagonist, truly believes that what the main character is considering is going to do them harm? Your contagonist is saying, you shouldn't do that. Don't proceed down that road. You're going to get hurt. Something bad is going to happen. Their intentions are 100% authentic and good. They're not doing anything out of any sense of evil or derailing that main character. They're authentically arguing, this is going to get you hurt and I care for you, so don't do this. But it's still a point of conflict. See how that works? So a contagonist can have thoroughly honorable motives and yet be arguing against the very thing that the main character needs to be doing to move that story forward. So you can kind of bend your brain into a pretzel as you start to think about, how can I hinder this main character by having other characters throw objections or redirections or those kinds of barriers in their way? So let's go a little further down that road. What can a contagonist look like? Let's look at a few just to give you some examples as you start thinking this through. You can have what you would call an antagonist by proxy. Okay, so it's not an actual person that's standing in the way of your character, but let's say it could be a logistical antagonist. Maybe the villain is going to have your main character served with a subpoena. Okay, so the person delivering that subpoena, which thereby derails your main character's actions, that's an antagonist. They're causing a problem in that main character's flow of whatever they're trying to get done. What if it's manpower? What if your allies to your antagonist, it could be the antagonist employee, it could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could just be someone loyal to them. What if they enforce some kind of consequence or conflict that thereby stops the protagonist, the hero, from pursuing their goal? So that's another person getting in the way in some shape or fashion. What if the antagonist is so big that they have liaisons and lackeys and other people that do their bidding? That's another way of stacking up those obstacles in the way of your main character's progress. Or it could just be something like using tension. I will use an example from one of Kathleen's stories, which is there are some ladies in a car, they're traveling on a trip, and they come to the treacherous road, and there's a boulder in the way. You can't go forward. Now you've got this treacherous road and a roadblock, and now you have to do the 38-point turn to get turned around to go back down the mountain. That's an antagonist by proxy. It's not a bad person. It's not a mean person. It's nothing attacking them, but it's still an obstacle that has to be solved. And the solving of that obstacle is what reveals something about the character who's solving it. So see how you put those little things in the way in order to develop that character and bring your reader into the story and into how they're acting? That's how you get that done. On a final note, what if you create conflict simply by obstructing forward momentum? Maybe, like I said, there's a henchman, or maybe your protagonist has to face a theme or an emotion. Kathleen's going to talk a little bit about those in the character traits that thematically resonates with them. And now they have this internal conflict that they have to find the balance of. This is where your character traits come in, certainly as antagonistic forces, because sometimes the struggle is internal and that main character is having to find balance and deal with those traits as they figure their way through the situation and the emotions that they're feeling to deal with it. On a final note, what about opponents that can't be represented by another person? The boulder is a perfect example, but you also have things like weather. Perhaps there's a storm and the storm traps those characters together in a certain place and now they have to deal with each other and their problems. That could be good. What if it's a threat to their survival? They could be marooned somewhere and they have to deal with finding food and shelter and the basic necessities, which again are conflicts that show and develop who they are. What if it's a system of oppression? Maybe there is some governing body or some ruling element or some other codified or systemic issue that's causing them trouble. You see this all the time in crime stories when you've got, the G-men and the NSA and the CIA. There's all kinds of alphabet agencies you can throw in to have some conflict if you want some of that high drama. And then finally, what about the subtle difficulties of just a task? Something as simple as renovating a house. Does anyone remember Shelley Long in The Money Pit? Ooh, that was an antagonistic force. It was an old mansion they decided to restore, and the whole movie is about all of the things that go wrong. Every time they start to fix something, something else goes wrong. All the way down to the second floor falls down onto the first floor. Crazy stuff. But it's just a renovation. Even something as simple as a task can become an excellent antagonist or antagonistic force to challenge those characters and push them through the story. And most importantly, to give your reader that satisfying conflict of watching, how is this character going to solve this problem? So those are some of the different ways that you can look at the facets of antagonists and how they hinder or dissuade or in some other way get into the way of your main character, challenge that hero, and push him through the narrative. So I hope that was helpful with those tips and tricks out there. I'm going to pass it over to Kathleen to talk about the character trait of attention.
Wow, thank you, Victoria. That was really spectacular. I sure enjoyed learning about all of the different possibilities of antagonists, and surprised to find that I even in one of my exercises wrote about one of your types of antagonists. Who knew that a big rock could be an antagonist in a story? Not much going on in the personality traits on that rock, I'm afraid to say. But there's a lot going on in the people that surround the rock and on all of the people that surround your character, be it your hero character or your villain character or someone simply in the landscape of your character's life. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to dive in our map portion on attention. What role does the attention of others and the attention our character pays have to do with balance. Balance traits are all about our character's ability to live comfortably within his own skin. And we're going to talk about two different character traits in this subgroup of attention. The first one is meekness. Now, you might not think that meekness has anything to do with attention, because there's a very popular conception of meekness that meek is like, oh, you're a little mouse, and you're gonna hide in the corner, and nobody don't pay me any. But what? Hide in the corner, why? Because you don't want attention? That's one aspect on the balance. That's a tipping over in the rigidity side. The character is not comfortable receiving attention and therefore wants to hide from it. In a perfectly balanced character where meekness is what we call a base trait, it's just a part of him, you're not going to see a mousy individual. That isn't part of the base trait of meekness. The base trait of meekness, the character is comfortable within himself and is capable, therefore, of giving focused attention outside of himself to the needs of the people around them. So that ability to focus outward is the perfect balance state of meekness. Because if you think about it, if the character is having all kinds of self-concern, self-doubt, unsure of himself, then that's going to make a cloud in front of his eyes. He looks and he tries to have relationships with people, but he's always on the lookout for, how am I being judged? How am I being received? How are others, what did they think about me? And that means that they're blocked in their ability to actually see the real people that are out there. And so that is actually the basis of a pattern of loneliness, because that other person only becomes a mirror, a fuzzy mirror by which they're hoping to see themselves. So there has to be some growth that comes out of the person to be more comfortable and more meek. There's another character trait that we're going to talk about also that's very closely related, and that's modesty. Modesty is another one that has a very sort of casual meaning, and it's a valid meaning when we're building a character too, because in the most casual sense of the word, modesty has to do with our character's willingness to conform to the norms of dress and behavior appropriate to his time in history and his station in life. That's the simple, direct definition of modesty. But when we think about immodesty, what's really going on? What's really happening when a character is shedding modesty? Whatever that is, whether he's standing up and making a scene of himself, or maybe dressing in such a way as to draw eyeballs, that's attention again, isn't it? You have the characters out there angling for attention, when that immodest behavior is like, look at me, look at me, look at me. Again, that's reflecting a very unbalanced need on the part of the character to receive something in an attempt to patch up something that's lacking in the character's own assessment of himself. He's not comfortable living in his own skin, and so if I get out there and if I'm so beautiful and I'm dressed so glamorously and everyone crowds around me and praises me, well then, again, they're looking for that mirror to say, show me how good I am. Show me that I'm worth something. And these can be, therefore, when you look at how is your villain, your antagonist, going to react when your vulnerable character shows either of these problems where they are demonstrating a need for someone in the outside world to bring them validation. That's like a hook. Here, pull me aside, control me. And boy, don't you think your villain is going to be ready to do that? And also in relationships, your abuser is going to be oh so ready to just love bomb your hero and just, oh, make them just feel so good. And then, okay, now that you're under my control, let's see what I can get you to do for me. Ooh, very dangerous situations there too. Very great potential for letting a villain into the life of a weak character. So once again, what we want to look for is in the perfect state of balance, the character with modesty is going to dress appropriately so as not to call undue attention to themselves. Again, appropriate to their station in life. If they're an attorney, well, they're going to dress up in a suit and be very businesslike in the courtroom. If the person is a chef, well, they're going to have the appropriate attire so that when they're cooking mad dash in the kitchen, they can splash food on themselves and it's okay because their white coat is perfect for that behavior. So that's what we're looking for in a balance trait. These traits are things that when everything's in perfect balance, they disappear because the person is able to see people clearly in their lives. And once you're really relating to another person, you're not in balance anymore. Now you're in the empathy traits. So this is, in its ideal world, it just vanishes. So I'll turn it over back to Victoria for any closing words that she may have to say.
Oh, absolutely. This is just it's a gem. It's just a gem because when you start to think about how can I challenge my characters, just looking at the different ways that you can get inside their brain, get inside their emotions, and really start to dig into why they do what they do and how characters are going to start to play off of one another. Something like just looking at meekness is terrific material. So as we go through these exercises, and Kathleen is sharing how these traits can begin to form levers that allow you to guide that character both emotionally and mentally through their actions and their reactions, that stuff is just gold. Just play with those traits, start playing them off of each other, use the profile tool, and start to think about how can I really get inside this person's head and understand what I need to do with the story to challenge them. And then start looking at that list of antagonists and those forces and how it all comes together in order to provide the glue for both sides of the story. This is so exciting, and I am so grateful that you guys are here with us. We're just doing good stuff. And at the end of the day, we're writing great stories, and that's why we're here.
So be sure to join us over in LiLLiPub, because over there in LiLLiPub, the lesson doesn't end on Tuesday. We talk about it through the week. And on Saturday, we have our wonderful fusion writing gatherings where we talk about writing that different members have submitted through the week. And we share what we're doing and just have a wonderful get together. So if you want to be a part of it, just pop on over to lillipub.org, because if you can imagine, if you want to write, being surrounded by writing coaches and encouraging readers who will help get your story off the ground, there's just nothing like it. I mean, yes, we have dues, small dues, $8 a month, but man, you cannot get a personalized coaching like that for $8 a month. Come on over to LiLLiPub and you're going to have a great time.